All right. Hi there, Marguerite.
Hi, Aaron.
So funny running into you here
Yeah.
on this specific
Awesome.
podcast link. Yeah, this is great. Um, so I'm very looking forward to talking with you today. I felt like I had to warm up with a few people first, honestly, interview wise, before I asked you on this podcast date.
I'm honored.
Uh, because those of you who are just getting to meet Marguerite and have the pleasure of meeting her today for the first time, she does podcasts and guests on podcasts and has no shortage of things that she will talk to you about. She likes to go deep on all the subjects. We can go anywhere and she will be game. She is the truth teller in the room. So it's kind of like at your own risk. Which I love about you. And I'm so excited for the people that are listening to me right now, all 7 of them, to get to know you too. And so we're going to bounce around on a couple different topics that I've kind of given you a hint of at first. But before I start diving into that and we just like dive right in, because we're not about the chatty chat, like coffee talk, like we kind of get into it. And so we're going to do that. We're going to let people in a little bit on the vibe that we kind of, when we get together, we go through stuff.
Yeah.
We talk about the personal stuff. We talk about the relationship stuff. We talk about the business stuff and all the guts in it. And so, Marguerite, can just let people know a little bit about you, where you're at right now, as far as the business that you run.
Yeah. Well, I'm a real estate agent, technically. I've been a real estate agent since 2005. And I have a website called movetotacoma.com. And I help people relocate to the beautiful city of Tacoma, Washington, and help people find a real estate agent. That's how I make the majority of my living. And I also consult with real estate agents on how to do something similar. So helping with their business planning, helping them attract clients. Like that's kind of like my work business lady identity. But as you know, like that kind of stuff never tells the whole story.
It's so true. I had 3 separate moments of like, oh, I want to talk about that. Oh, I want to talk about that. Oh, I want to talk about that while you were giving your intro.
Oh no.
And
It's so
so
funny because
good.
Aaron, you know me so well. I'm thinking to myself, like, oh, Aaron is probably like, stop talking about real estate. That's not why you're here.
No, not at all. Because I find your world so fascinating, especially in the aspects that you have carved out your own very unique space within it.
Yes.
And, people like me, and probably most of the people that are listening to this, like we have a passing knowledge with real estate. Maybe we've bought a house. And there might be a few people sprinkled here and there that have like done commercial real estate or
Yeah.
know a little bit deeper than that. But most of us are on that consumer side. So
Yes.
I find all of the stuff in that world fascinating. Um, especially the fact that I'm just going to go there real quick.
Yeah,
Especially the
please.
fact that you invented a new model within the real estate realm. And there were lots of people that wanted to tell you that that wasn't fucking possible.
Yeah.
And I have absolutely loved watching you as a friend and a fellow business owner just be like, no, it's a thing now. And
And I'll
and
tell you
and
my
prove it out. And now other people come to you to go, so how did you do that? They
yeah.
want to know how.
And this is the whole thing is my clients have always understood it. You're a past client. I helped you in your lovely life buy your beautiful home a million
It's
years
true.
ago.
We
And
still live
like
there.
clients, when I say, yeah, I help people relocate to the area, I answer their questions. And if they need a real estate agent, I make an introduction and that agent pays me a finder's fee. Clients get it. They're like, yeah, of course. Oh my God, what a great thing. Why doesn't every area have that? And the
Makes
agents
sense to me. Yeah.
historically have just been, why are you giving up most of the commission? That's so dumb. You could make so much more money selling a house. And so it's been a long journey of agents being like, oh, wait, what do you do? Clients always get it, but my peers don't always get it. It's a lonely life being a real estate matchmaker.
But it's so interesting too, especially when you're in a field that has what maybe has happened. In lots of fields, this has happened too, where the model becomes calcified. It becomes a thing. Like this is the way it works, and this is how everyone should replicate and do it. And there are
Yeah.
classes and seminars on it, and super trainings, and all kinds of
Mhm.
stuff. Just follow this, and you'll be successful.
Yeah.
And then someone comes along and wants to do it differently, and like everyone freaks out a little bit. And unless that person's brave enough to go, like, no, I'm going to try this out, and this is going to be a thing. like you said, it makes perfect sense to an audience of buyers. And then throughout that process, it starts to change. And all of a sudden people want to know like, oh, I didn't realize that was a thing. And I love that aspect that you did of that is so similar to what I'm seeing with entrepreneurs in other fields where they're realizing stop trying to keep all of the revenue and all of the money for yourself and all of the things and collaborate with people and then maybe do more volume and have everybody win. Better client experience. You are doing it a different way. So maybe I'm just throwing out numbers, but what I've heard is like it's like 6% for a real estate transaction, right?
Yeah, it
That you're
varies.
paying ish.
Everybody can negotiate that. But yeah, in my experience, I usually end up getting 25% of between 2.5% and 3% of the transaction.
Yeah. And so and your model specifically.
Yeah.
And then but the fact is you're matching with other people. So they are still making money. You're making money, but you're doing more matches. And your willingness to think about like, no, I could share. I could match make people and not keep everything for myself. And that would bring more joy for me and would help the customer more and would allow all these other real estate agents that are specifically perfect for this couple or this person or whatever. Like there's a way for everybody to win. But at first you get so much pushback, right?
Well, to be honest, if I'm like being totally honest, Aaron, like I didn't invent a new business model per se. There are a lot of people trying to make money off of real estate. You say it's a calcified business model. It is. It's barely changed, in 30 years. And yet it's extremely lucrative, right? There's a lot of money to be made in a transaction. It's very complex. It requires all these different people. There's a lot of money flowing through it and everybody wants to get a little piece of it. So there's organizations, companies like Zillow that will snatch a client off the internet, sell it to a real estate agent, take a finder's fee, just like I do. But the difference between what I do and what a lot of other, companies within the space are doing, I mean, it's a very common model is I've just leaned into the part of the transaction that I do best, which is finding great clients, finding out what they need, and matching them to a person that really specializes in what they do. And the problem is there's something broken within the industry in that it's not broken, it's inevitable. It happens within the coaching industry. It happens within, any software industry, right? Like you have the people that do the thing the best, they have their niche, they have their clients that they help the best. And then they have a hard time saying no to all these other people that they probably can't help as well, but they don't want to lose. Like, and I think having somebody in the middle that's matching, that's saying like, okay, what kind of house do you want to buy? What are you looking to spend? What kind of person do you work the best with? Do you want someone analytical or do you need like a life coach mom kind of energy coming off your realtor, right? And people know immediately what I'm talking about when I ask those kinds of questions. And so I'm directing. So my whole job now is just helping attract clients and then helping match them to the agents and then finding out what the agents do best. Because the agents almost always say, I'll work with everybody, instead of really saying like, this is the people I love to help. This is where I have the most skill. And so like kind of weeding through that becomes my job instead of the thing that used to be my job, which was driving people around to look at houses, making flyers and online marketing, trying to photograph a house, make videos about a house. All of that is somebody else's job now. And they get most of the money because frankly, that's the hardest part of the job.
And was there a moment where you were like, I have identified these things about this specific role that I've played before that aren't bringing me joy anymore, or that I don't really want to do anymore? And was that kind of the impetus for you wondering if there could be a different way to do this for you? Or like, was there that kind of moment? Or do you want to pretend that there was?
No, this is the deal. Oprah has this famous quote. If you Google it, you'll probably find it, where she talks about like life will whisper at you. And if you don't listen when it whispers, it will like hit you. And then if you don't listen, then it will like hit you with a brick. I'm gonna hit you with a brick kind of girl, Erin. Like there were so many increasingly loud cues that the way that I was running my business was not sustainable for a lifetime, that it wasn't the work that I was put on this earth to do. Martha Beck, God love her, the grandmother of all.
Yes, we love us some Martha Beck.
Love Martha Beck. And she talks about, you were put on this earth to your essential self will keep cueing you, will keep telling you this is what you're supposed to be doing. And the work I was doing was getting more attention, more applause, more money, and it was feeling less and less and less satisfying. So was there one particular incident? I mean, I could think of a few, but for the most part, it was just this feeling that like the external world was praising things that didn't feel good anymore. And that was
Oh my gosh, that's so
the
good.
saddest feeling in the world. Not that I'm sure no one has any idea what I'm talking about.
No, I think lots of people have an idea of what you're talking about. Yeah, yeah. Sorry, you were probably being facetious.
I was
I'm slow.
sorry.
But yeah, I love that like literally anyone that's watching this right now, if you're watching the podcast and listening to the podcast, she literally just picked up a teapot and poured herself some tea as if to make a point on what she just shared, which I just am loving right now because I love props. So well done with that. So I love, okay. You can tell obviously that we could go in lots of different directions
Yeah.
here. I love already what you've just said, which is like, you can listen to the whisper or you can wait for the brick.
Yeah.
But maybe you should start listening to, if you feel like as a leader or a business owner that like something isn't working, or that you'd rather do it a different way, but you're feeling a little bit scared to do it because the industry, the calcified model says that you're not supposed to. You'll never be successful if you do that. To maybe realize that the people that are very successful are the ones that challenge outdated models. And that sometimes it doesn't work. There's risk. There's a lot of risk sometimes. But also that like super hockey stick trajectory that everyone thinks that they want, like that's where those opportunities are.
Well, and there's nothing like your own success, you know, sometimes to really teach you that you didn't think the plan through. And I think a lot of times, you know, what we're looking for is market share or a certain revenue goal, and it's not rooted in supporting the life that we really want. And so we reach that goal, and there's this initial like, yes, I beat so-and-so, or I hit this revenue goal, and like, it's so exciting. And then you look around and you're like, why? And it sounds like, I feel like if 28-year-old Marguerite was listening to this, she'd be like, just give me the money. I'm sure that's a very dramatic lesson. And you know, I think most of us actually, as any kind of business owner, you have to learn that lesson on your own. But if you're in the midst of that, or you're beginning to feel that that might be a thing, that the thing you're pursuing once achieved might not actually bring you what you're looking for, like this is a good time to pause and say, like, what is it you're really trying to create with your business success, with your annual goal? Like, what if it comes at a cost of your health and well-being, your team's health and well-being? You know, is it going to be worth it, or is it you're looking for something beyond the revenue goal? The revenue goal is there to support a different goal. And I think I know I might be wandering the conversation a little bit, but at the end of the day, when you're planning, when you're looking at your life, when you're making a plan, when you're shifting, when you're listening to the whisper, you can only hear it if you know what it is you're really going for. And so many of us just stay busy. I certainly have gone through huge periods of my life where I stayed so busy that I couldn't hear it, and I didn't want to hear it for a reason.
Yeah.
I wasn't ready to listen to the whisper, and I needed to wait till an even brick hit my face.
Even when brick happened, you're like, oh, maybe that was just it was just one brick. It'll be fine. I mean, if there were 3 bricks, that would be a sign. Well, watch out. 3 bricks are coming your way. What's interesting too is, as your fellow business owner, entrepreneur friend, lots of hyphens in our relationship, it's been interesting for me to see how not only when you proved out that model could work for you, like we've talked about and touched on just a moment ago, other people are now asking questions about it. But then what I'm trying to say, I think, is that when you choose one thing and you do the scary thing and it builds up some bravery for you, and then you start to trust yourself a little bit more, that like, maybe when I take risks, there isn't always a cliff, or the cliff is actually only 1.5 feet, that it opens you up for other opportunities. Because I know there are very established real estate brands that are now asking you to come in and be a guest expert and to coach them. Correct?
Yes, that's true.
Look at her trying to be so humble. It's so true.
No, but I think this is what has been so interesting, is it's never what you think it's going to be about, right? Like, I remember when I was first starting to do this business model, when I was doing the referrals and the matchmaking, and I really wanted my industry to like appreciate that. I wanted them to see, like, this girl is smart. She's doing this interesting thing. Like, how is she doing that? I wanted people to ask me. I wanted people to notice. I wanted them to be curious. I would have loved the idea of them like reaching out to me and asking me to help them. when it was new.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody really did. And now it just runs like a well-oiled machine. And to this day, people don't really ask too much about that. But what they want to know is, where do you get all the business? And the thing that I had to learn in order to have a healthy matchmaking business is, client attraction, identifying the ideal client, we are in the midst of a nationwide market shift. I know anybody who's paid attention to real estate knows, like, stuff is changing.
Right.
So who is actually transacting? Who, just not just who's the client, but who can actually afford to buy a house? Who can actually afford to sell a house right now? Like, it's a never ending game that everybody is always trying to figure out. And that's what I got good at by accident. So do people really ask me to help them with imitate my business model? Almost never. But do they want to know how to get clients? Yeah. Everybody wants to know how to do that.
And you found out an interesting way to get clients. And so they figure, we want her brain to help us work on our business as well. Speaking of working on your business, I think that we should tell people a little bit about our 10-year plan. And we haven't spoken about this publicly, really, except to our significant others who probably are tired of us talking about it. But we decided, I don't even remember the moment when we decided this was a thing, but we decided at one point that we were going to get together in person. We live about 2.5 hours away from each other.
Yep.
And that we were going to get together in person. We were going to find a conference room with pens and whiteboards and like fun dry erases, like all the things for a great brainstorming session. And that we were going to kind of let it unfold, but map out. The goal was like an overarching 10-year plan, not just for your business, but for your life and your personal goals. Like, it was very ambitious.
Well, and if you recall, Aaron, I don't remember exactly what your headspace was, but I was coming off a 1-year sabbatical.
That's right.
And I was supposed to, I don't know if anybody can relate to this, during that year off, I was supposed to like come up with what I was going to do next in my life. And it did not happen. I mean, I got a lot of rest. It was a beautiful time. But I didn't exactly have like a lightning bolt moment. Like, this is the next business I'm going to start. This is the next goal I'm going to set. I was still kind of like, I don't know. And my thought was, okay, what I need is a 10-year overarching vision for my life. Like, I can't think about next year. I can barely imagine 3, 4, 5 years from now. It's all a blur. So what about 10 years? Let's go out further and work back from there. And you were like, yeah. So how do you remember? Do you remember it like that, or did I invent like?
I remember being scared because I was like, that means I have to commit to like a 10-year, like something that I want to be doing in 10 years. And it seems like that I should have accomplished quite a bit in that time. Yeah. So to name it was a little bit scary, but scary. I loved that the relationship I knew I had with you as a friend, as an entrepreneur, that we were going to have that nice blend of, we like dreaming together and bouncing ideas off of each other. We're very open to each other's input as fellow business owners. And we also are in a place where if one of us is giving the other one bullshit, the other one will call them on it.
Yeah.
Which is, sorry, I had to cough there, audience. Which is super valuable and rare to find another person that's going to be vulnerable with you and tick all of those boxes. And so I didn't really know what was going to happen. I really liked the idea of getting colored pens.
We colored
and Post-its.
By topic.
The Post-its were fantastic by topic.
Yeah.
And it was neat just to kind of let it unfold. And at the end of the day, I had this, for me, OneNote, for you, I think a spiral bound notebook, but like we had some revelations as far as big things that we felt at the time we'd like to gravitate towards in 10 years. Yeah. And then it became way easier than I thought to start thinking about, well, then what would those things be year by year that would need to happen to that point? And I don't think I've ever done that long-term of a planning before. And I've found it really helpful in several different ways, even though, and this is what I would like to point out, even though it's already different than that first session.
Yeah, it shifts, and not to quote Martha Beck again, but I cannot help
Go for it.
Yeah.
North Star us to death.
You don't want the thing you think you want. You want the feeling state that you think the thing you want is going to help you achieve. Sorry, the woman's like a prophet. And the fact is like, yeah, we had a vision. We took every category of our lives. I think it was like health, finances, home,
Yes.
relationships, children, like all these different things. And it was like, okay, what do we want in 10 years? What will we have achieved? And then we wrote it all out. And some of it is like, especially with home and finance, right? You get very specific. Oh, I'd like to have this much in the bank. I'd like to have these objects or items or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, it's because you think it's going to help you achieve some overarching feeling like security,
Mm-hmm.
contribution, happiness, whatever, right? And
Impact, well-being. Yep.
yes, exactly. And so, like, I think that while sometimes the details of the plan will shift, they're still holding up the same feelings, right? They're still built on the same pillars of secure. For me, it's always like security and peace, and like I'm so boring. Other people are exciting.
Boring? That's not boring at all. But I love what you're saying and what you're pointing out too, because I definitely had a very regimented, I would even say like masculine measure of success. Like I want this much in the bank and my business will have sold for this much. And then I will be living in this house. And like, it was very specific and very tangible, if I'm being honest with myself, very
Mhm,
material. And then I
mhm.
saw you gravitating and writing down things that would relate more to feeling states. And I quickly changed my paradigm. I was like, oh no, I like the way that feels better. But I don't think I would have naturally done that if I hadn't had someone to be like bouncing that off of and who was sharing with me what they were doing as well. Um, yeah.
Well, and just to help people kind of visualize what this process can look like, we took a room, we had stacks of post-it notes and played some nice music, and we just
Hmm.
focused on each category. In 10 years, I would in the category of health, in 10 years I will be, and then just started writing on post-it notes different things we in our ideal version of our lives, if things could go exactly the way we wanted, what our health would look like in 10 years, what
Yeah.
our finances would look like in 10 years, what our relationships with people in our lives would look like, what our impact on the world would be in 10 years. These are important things to think about. And we just started, and what happened is, after we were done, we were, because we know each other, because we trust each other, we swapped, and you went and looked at my stuff and I went and looked at your stuff. And I remember I stole a bunch of your ideas. Like, you had a really good one
Same
for
thing.
health. It was like your health one was like, I still remember, like, the doctor says I have the labs of someone 15 years younger. I was like, that would never occur to me. Like, yeah, I want that. Who doesn't want that? And what, whoa, okay, well, now I have a 10 years. How am I going to get there? What's that going to look like?
It's so
Very
true.
interesting.
I definitely, that whole steel sharpens steel sort of thing where you're like, oh,
Mhm.
I never would have thought of that way. And to have permission from each other too, to be like, hey, I just letting you know, like you totally thought of that, stealing that post-it
Yes,
note and
that's a good
replicating
one.
it in my pile. And I think that's what's so cool too. If leaders and business owners especially, it can be such an isolating experience, especially when you're growing your own business and you're a solopreneur at first and then maybe you're growing a team or whatever, but still can be kind of isolating.
Yeah.
And if you can find another person that you feel a vibe with and you can feel vulnerable with, and that they can share things with you if things aren't going so well, you can do the same. That you also know that when you share your triumphs, they're going to be genuinely excited for you
Yeah.
and not feel
Absolutely.
competitive about it, but like just be like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited for you that you hit that goal. I know it's so important to you. Like to be able to find a person like that when you're running your own business is just like the most amazing thing.
It is.
Um, and there isn't like a formula for doing it. Like just follow these 3 steps and you'll find your kismet entrepreneur person that you want to hang out with and that like seems to bring out the best in you, and hopefully the exchange is fair. But when it happens, man, grab onto it, because it doesn't even matter what business they're doing. It's kind of like they might move to another business or do a different thing, but
Mhm.
it's that energy that can be so helpful, especially when things are hard.
Yeah,
And
and
being
I
an
think this is
entrepreneur
where
can be
having
hard.
outside your industry is actually such a gift.
Oh,
Right? Because first
yes.
of all, you have somebody with a perspective. They haven't bought into all of the paradigms and all of the, the tunnel vision that you have. That's called expertise, right? And you have somebody outside of that looking at it going, but why? Why do you do it that way? And sometimes you have a really good answer. And sometimes they're like, that
Mhm.
sounds dumb. You know what we do in our business? We do this thing and it makes it a lot easier. Like simple
It's
things.
true.
And I mean, I feel like with you, I'm always pushing you and being like, but why? Why are you doing that? Why are you doing that? Who are you doing that for? I'm just pushing because I've had so
Mhm.
much pain in my career when I've ignored that question. And with you, you're always looking at me going, how much are you charging? Oh my God.
I'm such a producer. I'm sorry, what's the bottom line? Why aren't you tripling charging for that? What you're doing is so valuable. You need to charge 10 grand more. Like what's happening
Absolutely.
right now?
But that's the thing. It's opening my eyes, taking me out of my experience and helping me see like, oh, actually the rest of the world does this very differently. They pay for this differently. They charge for this differently. And it's very helpful to understand. And I think that it's something like, people joke about like work spouses and stuff. And that's like a very
Mm,
different thing, right? Like that's like somebody at work that's like your pal every day, coffee, chit chat. This is something bigger. This is like a trusted person, like maybe like the mob bosses have their consigliere.
oh my gosh,
He doesn't want to
yes.
be the mob boss. He doesn't. He's just there to help the mob boss out, and he's not going to try to take over. He's just chilling, eating his spaghetti, drinking his wine,
Yeah,
and you watch
super
what?
happy just to be the concierge. How do you say it? I want to say
Consigliere.
concierge. Yes, thank you. You're much better at pronouncing this than me. Also, she speaks fluent Italian, which, I'm just going to throw that out there as well. It's just one of the many skills that she has. Um, yeah. And so having that other person specifically, the value of the check-ins has been really, really good for me too. I don't want to just paintbrush it with like, because then it makes me accountable in big
Mm.
air quotes, because it doesn't feel like that. It doesn't feel like, oh, I better get my shit together this year because it's time to check in with Marguerite. It's more like, oh, cool. I wonder what she's learned in the last X amount of time. I've learned this, and hopefully I can share that with her as well. And something new is probably going to happen too when we exchange those ideas. And so it's kind of like a pulling towards, like almost like pre-grateful that you're like, I wonder
Yeah.
what's going to happen now. And
Well,
so those yearly check-ins, or we do it a little bit further than that, right? It's like a little year
I mean,
plus.
that's just because of
Yeah.
like the panorama, the COVIDs. Like
Yes,
we
totally.
created this 10-year vision, 2 months before a deadly global pandemic, which in retrospect was actually the perfect timing.
Perfect
But I'm
timing.
really glad you and I had no idea what we were in for.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think there is
Um,
something sacred about taking the time. And that's why
yeah,
it's something that you look forward to. It's not like, oh, it's time to go meet my accountability partner. Nobody wants to do that. But it's like,
no.
oh, this is the time of year that I pull my head above the clouds, like zoom way out and say, like, am I on the way to where I want to go? And if not, why not? What do I need to do to just like steer the ship? And that's a special thing. Of course we look forward to that. Like that's the best.
I yeah, obviously completely agree. And the what I'm loving right now too, and that I wanted to touch on with you is how I'm noticing right now, and I think I've mentioned this to you as well, that constantly putting in effort leads to the skill that you want to get, especially if it's aligned to some of the things that we're talking about, with whether it's a 10-year vision plan or it's towards a larger vision, and these are the things that you were going to do in the smaller amount of time, like a
Mhm.
smaller sub goal to get there.
Mhm.
And you know that you need to do a certain thing that maybe you don't have a skill in yet, and there might be some fear around that.
Yeah.
And that can be lots of different things in lots of people's businesses and leaders that are leading teams as well. You're like, oh, I know that we need to get better at this, or we need to get better at this. And it can seem overwhelming at first, but what I'm finding is, and I want your opinion on this as well, and if you have a completely different viewpoint, I'm totally excited about it, but it's almost like going after that skill and just starting to do it, even though you suck at it a lot. Like that's the only way that I can see being able to do it. secretly getting good at something doesn't really exist.
Oh, I wish. Oh my gosh, I wish it did. Aaron, I'm so sad that I'm coming on your podcast just quoting a bunch of other smarter people. But if you've never seen that Ira Glass YouTube video, if you Google Ira Glass, The Gap, he talks
Yep.
about this, and he's talking about, public radio producing, creative storytelling, but it applies to everything. And it's this idea that you start doing a thing because you have taste. Like, you're good at it. You know what that thing should look like. And the truth is when you start doing it, you probably aren't good at it right off the bat.
No, how could you be?
You can tell you're not good at it because you have good taste. You know what it should look like, and you're not hitting it. And yet, in order to become a person that can not only see the vision, but who can execute the vision, you have to be willing to try and fall short and try and fall short over and over again. And he said that gap, the reason that people not being informed about the existence of that gap in order to create greatness is what keeps people from being like reaching their total creative potential. And
because they quit because they can see that it sucks at first, and so they stop.
know, we're sure.
Yeah.
I'm doing stuff right now. And I'm like, I was telling you, like I've been doing more, consulting, coaching, and training others, and it's such a frustration for me because I can hear myself. I've paid so many great coaches. I know what it feels like when someone is doing it really well. And I know what it opens up in me and like how powerful that is. And sometimes I'm helping somebody and I can hear, I'm like, I should be able to ask them a question to get there. There should be a way for me to get through. And I don't know what it is yet, but I know we have to go bigger than we're going now. I don't know if this is, making sense, but it's like, I can see it in my own work right now where I fall short. And then there's other places in my work where, my gosh, I could be half asleep and execute brilliantly. But 5 years ago, I couldn't. 10 years ago, I certainly couldn't.
Isn't it so interesting? I love that. And it's so interesting how we will allow our brains to discount those places where we've had tremendous growth and confidence, and we can almost be half asleep or on autopilot and not give ourselves credit for that success. But completely still allow our brain to keep us from trying the new thing. Yeah. If we do half a step out and we can see it sucks, that Instagram post just doesn't look like the ones that you like, and you came off really well and it took you 8 times to record it. And so you just don't do it because you'll be embarrassed. Like all these sorts of things that we do, even though we've done it before as a coach or as an entrepreneur and building a new business model, you're like, other people would be like, what are you talking about? You just do stuff. And like but allowing it to suck at first when you have taste, to your point, feels like hot death.
Yes,
it's the worst.
It does. And also like there's we tell ourselves like, oh, maybe this competitor or maybe this person that I see online, they don't have a stage like that. They just did it and they came out the gate like nailing it. And most of the time that's not true. Some of us, I think, do have some innate talents. And we do forget that we have them, and we don't give we don't recognize that other people are probably looking at us going like, oh, you can just like hop on camera. Like you understand what lighting should be. And like you have this confidence to speak in public. Like all of those kinds of things are things that other people are working their butts off for years to get even just like stable at. And, you do walk in the room with it. Other people like, my partner is a designer, and like everything he makes is beautiful. Everything I can spend freaking 5 hours in Canva on a single Instagram post and it will look uglier in 5 minutes. Like, thank God that's not my work on this planet. It would take a lot of time and development to get that to a different place. We all start with different head starts.
Yep. And so, pursuing that skill, and pushing past it, even though like you have that deadly combination, because it's wonderful that you have taste. And especially if it's in creative pursuits or writing, you realize good writing when you see it, or good sales copy, or a beautifully designed website. Like it could be so many different things. You have good taste, but don't allow that taste to keep you from acquiring a new skill and figuring it out, even though it feels horrible at first to not be competent at something. I think that I am finding right now that it takes me a lot less time to get competent than I think it's going to.
Yes.
And so that's the one thing I would leave people with to kind of put a bow on this part of the discussion is it doesn't take the 10,000 hours to master something. That shouldn't be your measure of, especially if you're an entrepreneur or business owner, that shouldn't be your measure of when you're allowed to share it with the world, when you mastered it. It should be when you've gotten to the point on the curve where you're competent.
Yeah.
You were able to turn on the camera and speak coherently and some basic lighting and post it. And for one example, or write a blog article and know that 25 blog posts from now, it's going to look much different. And that's okay that you will be embarrassed with number one.
Totally.
It's totally fine. Yeah.
I think how this ties in with the visioning also is when you're kind of setting a goal, especially if it's something that gives you that, like, I want to learn to do this thing. And you go, that's going to be really hard. You know, how you have all these thoughts about it.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I've discovered with our visioning process is there were a few of these goals that I was so scared to write down. And then they just happened, just came together magically in a way I could not have foreseen, planned for, or executed. And some of the things, like we revisit this thing every year, I don't look at it all the time, right? I look at it maybe once throughout the year if I'm looking for something specific, but I look at it when we do our thing. And I'm like, oh yeah, I said I was going to do that. And it's happening. And I haven't been thinking about it. That initial focus, even if you spend, an afternoon doing a 10-year vision and you stick it in a drawer and you never look at it again, it can still change your life. Because just the act of spending a few hours like filtering and focusing, it's still operating in the background. Of course, some of these things are going to require effort and, grind, but I don't want people to walk away thinking like, oh, the only way you achieve things. Like we had an argument about this recently, you and I, like you were like, well,
oh, that's right.
You have to work hard. I'm like, oh, I really don't want to take that in there. And I really don't prefer to believe that it's going to take a lot of hard work to achieve this goal. I would prefer to believe that like showing up and being focused is enough to reach this goal.
I know. I got so mad. I was like, that's not the way it works.
Are you sure? And you know what?
I felt like such an old man telling you to get off my lawn.
But sometimes it does take a lot of effort and it is a grind. Who knows if it actually had to be it or not, but it is. And sometimes, man, it's like magic. And in order to like even know when these things are happening, you have to have some process for noticing what you want and noticing if you're achieving it. And you said it earlier, giving yourself credit for all the things you've already achieved. We spend so little time like celebrating. It's like, oh yeah, I mean, of course I own a house. Yeah, of course I have enough money to retire. Like I am 43 years old. There are people listening to this that have enough money to retire. I cannot imagine what that must feel like. That must be incredible, like
right.
65, ready to go. Maybe some of these like 50-year-olds that are just like all set. And like they worked hard for that at some point. They had that goal and they've achieved it and they probably don't think about it very much at all. And for me, that's still like, wow.
Because the brain just, as soon as you get it, the brain's like, and discounts it. Yeah. Now I'm going to focus on the next thing. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Taking the time to celebrate those things. And I love what you just said as well, because this ties in with something that has been kind of bouncing around in my brain that it keeps popping up for me the last couple of weeks. And that's that it's okay to not check off all the things on the list. It's okay to buy the course and to, obviously very self-reflecting right now, buy the course and watch the first 3 videos. And I learned something really good in that second video. And it's okay for me to not feel bad about the other 6 videos that I haven't gotten to yet, or the other skill that I wanted to acquire, but I learned a little bit of it and I'm better. I can apply that to a different area of my business now. Like it's kind of like, to get really basic about it, it's like when you buy books. And sometimes people have a bunch of books on their side table and they actively feel bad about the fact that they haven't read them, or that they've only read a quarter of one and they moved on to another book because they didn't like that book as much. It's like, no, it's okay that you just read a quarter of the book. And did you get something out of it? Great, move on. That's fine. And I'm seeing this pop up for me.
The majority of business books I've read that have changed my life I've maybe read the first third of. And I mean, frankly, all the good stuff is front loaded these days anyway. Let's not be hard on ourselves about that. If we're not,
Yeah.
if you're not in school, like there's no reward for turning in every paper all the way through the course, right? At the end of the day, it's there to help you achieve something. And if you've achieved something, that's great. And actually, if all you've achieved is noticing that you need to stop buying courses and go get some shit done, like that's also an incredible
Boom.
achievement.
See, I told you there were going to be knowledge drops that happen with Marguerite. She just likes to rattle those off every once in a while and have another sip of her tea. Pour some more tea in that mug right now. Yeah. Marguerite, this has been absolutely amazing. Thank you for sharing time with everyone that's listening right now. I know that people are going to need to re-listen to some of this because you and I talk really fast and that's just the way it is. Like, get on board. Is there anything that you could tell us about, like, if people are like, oh my gosh, I love Marguerite's energy, I'm in that field, I want to learn more about maybe the business she's doing right now or coaching or anything like that, like, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
I mean, I'm on the LinkedIn's.
Okay.
I have a website, margueritemartin.com. But yeah, I mean, find me on the LinkedIn's and pop me a message. Like, I'm around. I don't do a lot of personal social media anymore, as you know, like more of a business lady on the internet, but I'm always happy to DM and chit chat.
That's awesome. Marguerite, thank you so much for coming on today and for letting me interview a few people first to feel like I was ready
I
for
have
what I
loved
knew
your
this was going to
interviews so
be.
far. Keep doing more of these. You're good at it.
I'm having fun. I think that should be an ingredient we leave people with as well. Like, get some more skills, but have fun doing it if you can.
Absolutely.
Yes, totally. All right, Marguerite, thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.